daring capture of the terrorists who hijacked the cruise ship, the Achille Lauro?
Well, as way things work in Washington, it is surreal. I was a Marine major and then lieutenant colonel for the second endeavor. And I was the chairman of what was secretly called the Terrorist Incident Working Group. The State Department ostensibly was the head of all the counterterrorism efforts in the nation, but after 1983, President Reagan wanted to be able to carry out proactive measures that you couldn't sit and discuss in large groups of people. So we had this very small committee that did these kinds of things. We'd actually started in 1982. After 83, it was kind of Katie bar the door. And it had very senior officials, to include a 3-star admiral on it, and it's chaired by a Marine major. Go figure. I mean, it's Washington. And so what we would do is we would look at all the things that were happening from both open source information and intelligence and say we need to proactively put people in various places to do preparation for various things. We didn't have PowerPoints and we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all the means of communications you have today, but it worked. And so in the aftermath of the Achille Lauro, for example, because we've already talked a little bit about Grenada. Grenada was in the aftermath of the bombing of the Marine barracks. Marine barracks happens on a Sunday. 241 Marines and sailors are dead. Over 1,000 are actually involved in the whole thing. The French have had their barracks blown up. And things have gone to hell in a handbasket. And the president flies back up from Augusta. And that afternoon, after a morning meeting and then another one in the evening, in the afternoon, the president orders the Commandant of the Marine Corps to carry out an investigation as to what happened in Beirut and turn the Marine Expeditionary Unit that's on the way to relieve, which is my old battalion, 1st Battalion, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment were the ones that rotated in and out of the Mediterranean. And that's where I had come from. And I knew all of them well and personally, to include the CO who was terribly wounded in Beirut. He turned around the battalion, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, that was on its way to the Mediterranean already, turned it south and said, be prepared to go ashore and carry out the rescue of these students, because he was not going to have any hostages. Achille Lauro happens because, remember, this event went on for 7 days. October is terrorism month. 9/11 changes that and pushes it back to September. Every terrorist organization has an anniversary date that they consider to be special, and they try to carry out acts to memorialize themselves. And we knew that the PFLP-GC, which carried out the hijacking of the Achille Lauro, had an event coming up in October they wanted to memorialize. When they hijacked the ship, we started following the ship with submarines and airplanes and the rest of it. And very quickly realized these guys were going to get away unless we did something. Well, they pulled into port in Alexandria. Hosni Mubarak, as the president, lies to the president over the telephone about what's happened, claims he does not know where the terrorists are, says they escaped. Well, in fact, we had information from an allied source, and I don't remember whether it's been declassified or not, so we'll just leave it that there's an ally of ours in that part of the world. I just violated security, I'm sorry. And they gave us the tail number of the airplane that they were on. And so that was passed from the Pentagon to the USS Saratoga, the 6th Fleet, and they intercepted the flight that was going to Algiers. Actually, it was going to Tunis. It was on their way to Tunis because they were going to go out and meet Yasser Arafat, which is where he'd gone after he'd left Lebanon, and they were going to go back to a hero's welcome. And instead, the plane was vectored in, made to land at Sigonella. We'd taken the C-141 that Carl Steiner, a U.S. Army general who was the head of JSOC at the time, is on the airplane. He's got a SEAL team and he's got the Delta Force. They surround the airplane. They arrest them. And Carl Steiner, one of the bravest things I have ever seen, he hands his submachine gun, his MP5, and his 9mm pistol to his aide and walks up the ladder that's now been pushed up to the door, punches the button, opens the door of that Egypt airliner, and there's an Egyptian commando pointing an AK-47 at him. And in Arabic, General Steiner told him, you put that down, I don't want you, I want them, and I'm going to take them. and the Egyptian colonel, who was sent there to help them get away, puts down his AK-47, and they took him in. Carl Steiner is still one of the bravest people I ever met. We used to travel together to various places. I had a passport that had my picture in it and the name William Paul Good, G-O-O-D-E. I also had another one from another country that had my picture in it and the name John Clancy. Carl Steiner, go figure. There's my uncle. Figure out what country. Carl Steiner used to travel on a blue passport with his picture in it and the name Maynard Peebley. His cover was to be the retired principal of a Tennessee high school. He used to wear double knit trousers, white socks, and they were too short. So when he'd sit down, and they never sat with each other, but I would watch him, some little old lady would say, "What do you do, sir?" He said, "Ma, I'm retired as a high school principal, and I was going to take a trip around the world with my lovely wife, Myrtle. And she's now gone. And she's right here in this envelope. So I take her with me." That's a real conversation killer right there. Don't play this back tomorrow, please.